I wasn't expecting the email to be real. It came in the middle of a cold Wednesday morning, while I was nursing a black coffee and scrolling through rejection letters from hiking guide applications. Subject line: caretaker wanted, 90, zero for 6 months. Must be willing to isolate. At first, I laughed. It sounded like a scam, but I clicked it anyway. The message was oddly professional. Brief, formal, and devoid of grammatical errors. Signed by a William Blackwell, representing Blackwell Holdings. He claimed to own a private estate nestled deep in the Colorado Rockies, only accessible by logging road or helicopter. The property needed to be maintained and monitored during the off-season. No guests, no visitors, no supervision, just a once-a-week check-in via satellite email and basic upkeep. The offer was high, suspiciously high, but after a quick search, I found Blackwell Holdings was a legitimate, if eccentric, development firm, real estate, mining, private land conservation. Their portfolio stretched from Aspen to British Columbia. I ran a background check on the sender's domain. It was clean, linked to a corporate network in Denver. Maybe it was real. Maybe I was just desperate enough to hope. I called Beth, my sister, told her about it. She was wary, of course. Thought I was walking into some Deliverance-style horror setup. Promise me, she said. If anything gets weird, you'll bail. I promised. 3 days later, I signed the digital contract, a non-disclosure agreement, maintenance terms, caretaker responsibilities, and medical waiver, legally stacked a mile high. The next morning, I woke up to a $45, zero deposit in my checking account. No turning back. I packed everything I thought I'd need. Rifle, ammo, solar battery packs, canned food, first aid kits, books, my old camping journal. The whole thing felt like prepping for a survival show. William had left instructions, GPS coordinates, a printed map with route highlights, and a laminated card marked estate authorized. I taped it to my dashboard like a badge of courage. The final part of the drive wound through steep forest trails, winding through mist and pine. No cell signal, just the sound of tires crunching gravel and the occasional elk darting across the road. I stopped in a small town called Helms Hollow, population probably under 200. Grabbed last-minute supplies, jerky, candles, extra lighters. The store clerk, a sun-wrinkled woman in her 60s, eyed my gear and asked, "You headed up to Blackwell's place?" I nodded cautiously. She sucked on her teeth. Caretakers never last long up there. When I asked what she meant, she just rang me up in silence. By sundown, I reached the estate. To say it was stunning would be an understatement. The house stood on a rocky outcrop overlooking a pine-choked ravine, flanked by stone terraces and massive windows facing the valley. Modern, but cold. Too perfect, almost. The kind of house designed by someone who wanted to impress someone else, but who never actually lived in it. A single cable ran from the back deck to a satellite dish. Internet limited to email only was active. I parked beside the garage and hauled my gear inside. Every room was stocked, blankets folded, fireplace cleaned. There was even a fridge full of food, though I noticed the labels were in French. Imported, maybe fancy, expensive, but not fresh. That first night, I stayed up reading in the den, a journal I'd brought with me. Arctic explorer accounts tales of isolation, frostbite, and madness. I thought it'd prepare me. Instead, it just set the tone. Sometime past midnight, I heard a sound outside. Not an animal, not wind, a scream, far off, but human. I stepped onto the back deck with a flashlight, sweeping the forest line. The beam caught only trees and a fading trail of fog. I told myself it was a fox. They can sound like that half howl, half woman screaming. I'd heard it before near Glacier Park. Still, I locked every door and window before crawling into bed. The scream echoed in my head for hours. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I found something strange. A set of footprints, barefoot, leading from the edge of the forest straight up to the glass sliding door, stopping just before the porch steps. No return tracks, no prints leading away, just toes dug into the wet dirt, as if someone had stood there, watching. I stood there for a long time, staring at the prints. They were too clear to be old. The morning dew had beaded in the heel impressions, meaning they were fresh laid sometime after that scream last night. But no broken branches, no torn up earth, just those barefoot tracks ending 5 feet from the porch, like whoever left them evaporated. I followed them as far as I could, but they faded into the pine needles near the tree line. I took a photo with my phone. Later, I tried to convince myself it was just a trick of light and shadow. A deer maybe, wind patterns, anything but what it looked like. A human barefoot and silent standing just yards from where I'd slept. That afternoon, I did a full sweep of the estate perimeter. The place had motion-activated floodlights on all sides, and none had gone off during the night. I tested them, they worked fine. No signs of forced entry, no camera system either, which I found strange for a property this remote and expensive. Just a pair of old trail cams out by the driveway and nothing else. I checked the email uplink, sent my first check-in to William Blackwell. Arrived safely, place is secure, small animal activity overnight, nothing major, will report weekly. Beth had emailed too. Let me know if you get bored or start seeing ghosts. Don't go all shining on me. I replied with a picture of the fireplace and a fake smile. Didn't mention the footprints. 3 days passed, mostly quiet. I spent the time reading, chopping wood, writing in my field journal. The isolation didn't bother me much. I'd been solo hiking for years, even done an 18-day glacier traverse in Alberta. This wasn't much different, at least on the surface, except for the sense of being watched. That low, constant hum in the back of my skull, like someone just beyond the trees was always observing me, waiting. On day 4, I drove back down into Helms Hollow to stock up on gas and a few extra supplies. I brought my camera too, hoping to get some photos of the sunset on the return. The clerk, Emma, I learned was working again. This time, she didn't ask me how the estate was. She just stared at the scratches on my arm. I hadn't even noticed them until she said something. Thin, red welts trailing from my elbow to my wrist, like I'd brushed against bramble. But I hadn't, not that I remembered. Full moon's tomorrow, she said, absently ringing up my matches and protein bars. I gave a weak chuckle. You're not going to tell me I'll turn into a werewolf, are you? She didn't laugh, just said, watch the mirrors. That's where it starts. That night, the clock started slipping. I'd been making dinner, just a can of chili and some cornbread I'd brought from town, and noticed the microwave flashing. 3 Zurem. I checked my watch. Kate, 4:03 p.m. The wall clock said 1. 15 p.m. My phone, no service, no time sync, just a black screen and a low battery warning. I rebooted everything, replaced batteries, checked the circuit breakers, no change. It wasn't just the clocks, either. Outside, the sky looked wrong. Not night, not twilight, just this endless gray like fog, but without mist. The stars blinked in and out, flickering like dying bulbs. No moon, no wind, just quiet, so much quiet. I lit a lantern and stayed in the den, reading and pretending everything was fine. Around 1 a.m., assuming the lantern clock was right, I heard something in the walls. Not mice, something bigger, heavier, dragging claws. I grabbed the rifle, chambered around, and followed the sound room by room. It stayed just ahead of me, like whatever it was knew where I'd go next. It moved faster than I could, but never out of earshot. When I finally flung open the attic access panel, nothing came out, but I found a torn piece of fabric snagged on the edge. Gray, thin, like hospital scrub. The next day, I didn't leave the house, didn't check in with William, didn't reply to Beth. I just sat in the office, reviewing the contract again. looking for anything I'd missed. In the section labeled long-term effects and obligations, there was a line that hadn't stood out before. Caretaker shall submit to a state protocol should environmental deviation occur. Duration of containment. Indefinite. I didn't remember signing anything like that, but there it was. Plain as day. And my signature. Bold at the bottom. I checked my reflection in the monitor glass, and for half a second I swear I saw it blink at me, but I didn't sleep that night. I tried. God knows I tried. I took melatonin, even drank half a bottle of red wine I'd brought for the holidays. But every time I closed my eyes, I'd hear scraping, not inside the walls now this time. It was outside, on the windows. The estate has 13 of them, all massive panes facing the wilderness, and something somewhere was brushing against them, lightly, like fingers or claws. I covered the windows with blankets. Every last one. It felt stupid, like some childish attempt to ignore the boogeyman. But it worked for a while. At least I didn't have to see what was out there, even if I could still hear it, even if I could feel it. And then one of the blankets moved. I was in the kitchen, brewing coffee I didn't need, when I noticed the dining room curtain just slightly shift, like a breeze from inside had tugged it. I walked over, lifted it, and behind the glass, there was nothing, just fog and my reflection. Only it wasn't quite my reflection. The man in the glass smiled. I jumped back, knocking over the coffee pot. Scalding water soaked the floor. When I looked again, it was just me normal. Pale, wide-eyed, no smile. That's when I took the rifle down from the mount and kept it with me. I didn't know what was happening. I still don't, but I know what I saw. That morning, if you can call it morning, when the sky stays dim and the sun refuses to rise, I drove into Helms Hollow again. I needed answers. Emma wasn't at the counter this time. A younger guy was working mid-30s. Long beard, eyes that didn't meet yours. When I asked him about the Blackwell estate, he laughed nervously. "You're the new guy." Huh. I nodded slowly. "You already hear them yet?" "Hear who?" He didn't answer. Instead, he leaned in and said, "Whatever you do, don't stay past the next full moon. That's when it sticks." What sticks? But he just rang up my propane and said, "Ask Emma. She knows more than I do. She used to work up there." Back in '96, I found Emma behind the town library. She was chain smoking, sitting on a bench that looked like it hadn't been cleaned since Clinton was in office. I asked her about the Blackwell estate. She looked at me for a long time. Then she said, "It's not the house that's cursed. It's the land, that ridge, that patch of pine. It's been swallowing people for over 100 years." I laughed. I shouldn't have, but I did. She didn't. "You think you're the first. They call it an estate. But it used to be a confinement ward back in 1908. Government built it. Quiet like. Called it the Boundary Project." For what?" Her cigarette trembled. "Things that don't stay dead. Things that come back wearing your face." She handed me an old newspaper clipping. Yellowed. Faded. "Caretaker disappears in isolated sanitarium incident. John Morrison feared dead. Nobody. No foul play. Just gone. Vanished from the same property." I thanked her and left. Drove back to the estate in a daze. The fog had thickened. Sky darkened. My GPS refused to load. I barely found the road. When I finally arrived, all the window blankets were gone, folded neatly on the couch, as if someone had stepped inside while I was gone and cleaned up after me. I checked every room. Nothing, until I found a message on the bathroom mirror written in steam, though the house was cold. "You're staying." I didn't touch the mirror, didn't wipe the message away. I just stood there in the half-lit bathroom, staring at the words, "You're staying." Not written with a finger or ink, just formed from steam. Perfect lettering. Too like someone had etched it with intent, then timed the fog to reveal it. The window was closed. No breeze, no condensation anywhere else. I opened the cabinet under the sink and reached for the bottle of rubbing alcohol I kept with the first aid kits, just in case. Not sure what I expected to use it for. Maybe some part of me still believed I could disinfect whatever this was. That night, I didn't cook, didn't sleep. I sat in the den with the fireplace cold, my rifle in my lap, and every light on. At 2:14 a.m. again, according to the flickering, inconsistent microwave clock, I heard knocking. Not on the door, on the glass. I turned slowly. Living room window, the largest one, facing the ridge. The knocking was steady, not frantic. Calm, rhythmic. Knock, knock, knock. I walked to it like a sleepwalker, my heart crawling up my throat. And I saw a shape on the other side of the glass. Not a person, not really. It was me, but wrong. Taller, somehow. Paler, its head cocked to the side with an unnatural stiffness. And its eyes, God, the eyes, they were all black, like beetles. It lifted one hand and traced something into the fogged pane. Help! Then it grinned. Not my grin. Something borrowed. Too wide. I raised the rifle and shouted, "Get away from here." The thing didn't flinch, just stepped back into the fog, melted into it, gone. The rest of the night was silent. I didn't sleep. When dawn finally broke, or what passes for dawn out here, I checked the outside perimeter. No footprints, no smudges, no condensation trail on the glass. Like it had never happened. I went inside and sat on the floor. I started crying. That day, I made a decision. I was leaving. I didn't care about the rest of the contract, the money, the estate, or William Blackwell. I packed a bag, grabbed my keys, and threw everything into the trucks. The rifle sat on the passenger seat. I didn't even bother locking the front door. But the road was gone. I don't mean that metaphorically. I mean the winding dirt road, the only one that connected the estate to Helms Hollow, wasn't there. I drove to where it should have been. It was just pine trees. A wall of them, unmoving, thick as brick. I got out and walked 30 feet in. It circled me. No trail, no light, just cold. When I turned back, I wasn't facing the estate. I was back at the bathroom mirror. I screamed so loud my voice cracked. I started marking walls after that, carving symbols into wood, writing dates, times, temperature, wind speed. Every hour, every change. I filled 5 notebooks in 3 days. Time made less sense each cycle. Sometimes it would be morning, then blink into midnight. Other times, I'd spend what felt like 12 hours reading and look up to find the sun hadn't moved. But the worst part, I started hearing my voice, not from me, from other rooms, calling my name, whimpering, crying. Once, it whispered, "Come upstairs." I found the truth, but I was alone. One night, while checking the pantry, don't ask why, I'd already cataloged everything 12 times. I found a door I hadn't seen before. It wasn't hidden, not locked. It had just not been there yesterday. Beyond it was a staircase. Down? I don't remember walking down the steps. Only that I was suddenly at the bottom, standing in a concrete hallway. Cold, damp. At the far end, a metal door. Rust had eaten through parts of it. The knob was ice. Inside it, a room filled with mirrors. Dozens of them. Floor to ceiling. Different shapes. Sizes. None of them matching. In each one I saw me. But not me. Versions. Some older. Some bloodied. Some screaming. Some smiling. In the center of the room was a chair. And a journal bound in leather. On the first page, in handwriting identical to mine, it read, "Caretaker log cycle 42. And below it, "Do not trust the one in the mirror." I backed away from the journal like it was made of fire. Cycle 42. I didn't even want to guess what that meant. I stared around the mirror room, avoiding the reflections as best I could. But it's like they wanted to be seen, those other versions of me. They moved differently. One was scratching at the glass. Another was just weeping. One stood perfectly still, but his eyes, God, His eyes tracked me the whole time. I grabbed the journal. I know, I shouldn't have, but my hands moved before my brain could stop them. The moment I touched the leather, every mirror went dark. The next thing I remember, I was back in the estate kitchen, barefoot, the journal in my hands, and the front door wide open. Outside, the snow had fallen heavy, but there weren't any tracks. Not mine, not anyone else's, like I'd never left the house. But the book was still with me. I opened to the first few pages. The entries were dated going back decades. 1974, 1991, 1996, all written in my handwriting, or at least handwriting that looked like mine. The entries started off like this. Day 1, they offered me the job. High pay. Said I'd be alone, but well provided for. Easy money. Day 4, heard something outside the first night. Thought it was coyotes. Not so sure anymore. Day 6, the lights flicker in rhythm. It's like they're talking. Day 10, I saw myself at the class, but he looked hungry. Each caretaker, if you can even call him that, wrote about the estate changing shape, about things in the mirrors, about time collapsing. Some said they tried to run. Others tried to destroy the house. One entry chilled me to the bone. Day 27, Beth called, but Beth died in 2019. She asked if I was feeling like myself. Then she laughed. My stomach turned. My sister's name is Beth. I closed the book and tossed it into the fireplace. It refused to burn. I'm not kidding. I left it in there for hours. The flames licked it, danced over it, but the journal just sat there like it was immune. When I finally pulled it out, it was cold, ice cold. I shoved it in a drawer and locked it. That night, the drawer was open again. Over the next 3 days, the estate started shifting. Hallways changed length. The upstairs bedroom grew an extra door that led into a spiral staircase I'd never seen. I woke up in different rooms than I fell asleep in. Sometimes I'd hear footsteps from above, but there was no floor above mine. On day 21, I checked my email. I hadn't used the computer in a week. I just couldn't bring myself to. But that day, I had to know someone else existed out there. I opened Gmail. There was one unread message from William Blackwell Contractor, Govey. Subject, stay in the house. Body, do not open the basement hatch. Do not acknowledge your reflection if it speaks. Do not leave during the convergence. You were chosen. Accepted. I stared at the screen, unblinking. I hadn't told Blackwell anything about the basement or the mirrors. I unplugged the computer. I turned it back on a few minutes later. Same message, but this time the subject line had changed. Subject, you already did. That night I heard my own voice whispering again, only it was inside my room. It whispered, you're almost ready. I turned on every light. There was nothing there, but in the mirror, my reflection stayed still 2 seconds too long. I stopped looking in mirrors, started covering them. Every reflective surface, bathroom, hallway, the one above the mantel I draped with sheets, towels, blankets, anything I could find. I even taped black construction paper over the chrome on the faucet, but the estate didn't like that. On day 22, I woke up to find all the coverings removed, laid neatly at the foot of my bed, and on the mirror across from me was a word scrawled in condensation. Closer. I didn't scream. I didn't panic. I got up, grabbed the rifle, and went straight to the basement hatch. There was a chain lock on it, thick, industrial. I had walked past it a dozen times since arriving and never even noticed the damn thing. I removed the chain. I opened it. Stairs led down into darkness. No lights, no smell, just pressure, like descending into an MRI machine the size of a cathedral. I brought a lantern. My phone's flashlight wouldn't even flicker. Batteries drained within seconds. As I stepped downward, I started hearing something strange, not voices. Humming, soft, melodic, like a lullaby sung in reverse. I descended 20 steps, then 20 more. The air got colder. On the 41st step, I stopped. My lantern's flame went still, no flicker, no movement, like time was frozen. And ahead of me, in the shadows, I saw them, reflections, lining the walls, dozens of them, like standing inside a house of mirrors, but no glass, just surfaces that reflected black, glossy stone that pulsed faintly with dull red light. In each surface, a version of me, twisting, grotesque, some emaciated, some bloated. One had no eyes, another was banging his head silently against an invisible wall, and just one smiled. He mouthed, "You're almost home." I turned and ran. I ran up the stairs faster than I thought possible. I slammed the hatch shut behind me and locked the chain back into place. The humming stopped, but as I backed away, I noticed something new. A carving, fresh, dug into the wood beside the hatch in long, trembling strokes. Cycle 43. The next day, I found a VHS tape in the mailbox. No postage, no return address. It was labeled. To the next one. I almost threw it out, but curiosity's a dangerous thing. I dusted off the old VHS player left in the den and fed the tape in. Static. Then, a man, disheveled, dirty, wearing my clothes. His eyes were sunken and bloodshot. He looked into the camera and whispered, "If you're watching this, you're in the house. Don't trust what you see. Don't trust what you remember. This place eats time. It eats you. The mirrors are doors, but they open both ways. And once it's ready, it'll call your name in your own voice." He leaned forward. "Don't let it in." The screen went black. I haven't slept since. I keep hearing the phone ring. Even though there's no landline here, I've stopped trying to email Beth. Every message bounces back now with the subject line, "User no longer exists," but I still talk to her in my dreams. And in every one of them, she says the same thing. "You're doing better than the last one." I've lost track of what day it is. The journal says 26, but the sun hasn't risen in 3. Or maybe it has, and I'm just not where the sun reaches anymore. This morning, if you can call it that, I woke to the smell of smoke. Not wood smoke, something sharper, like melted plastic and charred metal. I followed it to the estate's office. The computer had turned on by itself. Again, it displayed one line of text in blinking red font. The convergence begins at sundown, and beneath that, a countdown. 06, Forchitsu, none. I don't know what the convergence is. I only know it has something to do with the basement, with the mirrors, with me. The reflections have been getting closer. That sounds insane, I know. But every time I glance at a reflective surface window, sink, even the water in the tub, they respond faster. Mimic me with less delay, until this morning, when one didn't mimic me at all. I looked down into the water, and it was smiling. I packed everything I had. The rifle, the med kit, all the rations left. I loaded it all into my truck. The driveway had vanished. Where there was once a gravel path, winding down to the road, was now just forest. No tire tracks. No memory of how I even got up here. I drove anyway. After 30 minutes of dead trees and no road, I came to a clearing. In the middle was a structure made entirely of mirrors, like a chapel built by some lunatic. I braked, I stared, and then I saw her, Beth, standing in the doorway, waving. I got out, ran, but the closer I got, the more wrong she looked. Her eyes were too wide, her movements too smooth, like she was puppeted. She smiled and said, "You're the last one, right? You made it the furthest." I backed away. She stepped toward me and whispered, "He wants you to remember." Then she flickered like static on an old TV and vanished into the mirror walls. When I turned around, the forest was gone. The estate stood behind me again, towering, waiting. No truck, no path, just a front door, open a crack, like it had been expecting me. Inside, everything had changed. The furniture was covered in sheets. Cobwebs stretched from ceiling to floor. The paintings had all been replaced with portraits of me, some older, some inhuman. One had hollow sockets where the eyes should be. Another had antlers growing from its skull. The journal was back on the table. Page 1 now read, "Final cycle initiated." I tried to tear it apart. Burn it again. This time, it screamed, "I don't know what's happening. I only know that tonight when the countdown hits 0, I have to make a choice. Stay or open the hatch again. And whatever's waiting down there, it's not just another version of me. It's the one who started all of this." I sat on the floor for what felt like hours, staring at the journal. Final cycle initiated. The words weren't in ink anymore. They pulsed like blood beneath skin. I closed the book and felt something breathing beneath the leather cover. It's alive, or aware, or both. The countdown was down to 3 hours now. Whatever the convergence meant, it wasn't waiting for me to figure it out. I did what any sane person would do. I tried to destroy everything. The journal, the mirror in the hall, even the VHS tape. I burned them in the fireplace and watched as the fire roared unnaturally high. I thought it was working until the flames flickered green and the items reappeared on the coffee table clean, untouched, exactly where they had been. I screamed until my throat gave out. No one came, but something did answer from inside the walls, and knocking, rhythmic, 3 beats, pause, and 4, like coda. I followed it to the east wing, a part of the house I rarely entered. The doors were different, now older, rotted, warped like wet paper. The lights flickered overhead. One door was cracked open. A faint glow leaked out. I should have run. I opened it. Inside was a room I hadn't seen before. Circular, stone walls, no windows. In the center was a figure seated in a chair back to me, breathing shallowly. Monitors surrounded him. Dozens, each showing different angles of me. Me brushing my teeth, me reading, me burning the journal, me right now. I stepped closer. The man in the chair was me. Older, pale, eyes glazed, mouth slack. Tubes ran from his arms into machines pumping black fluid. I touched his shoulder. He twitched. Then without turning he whispered, "Took you long enough." I froze. He coughed, thick, rattling. "Every caretaker becomes the estate. You didn't know that yet. Did you?" I backed away. "You're not me." He smiled, slow and painful. "No, I'm what you become when you stay." The monitors all went black, one by one. Then one flashed back on, a live feed of the basement hatch. It was open. I ran, down the hall, past the rotting doors, back into the main wing, where the estate breathed around me like a living organism. The front door was gone. Just a wall now. No exits, only down. The countdown hit 1 hour, and my reflection started talking on its own. In every mirror, I moved, but the reflection didn't. It just stared. And then, in perfect synchronization, they all whispered, "Choose." Back in the living room, the fireplace blazed with no fuel. The journal opened itself. A new page had appeared. "You are the 44th. The cycle ends if you go deeper." I knew what I had to do. I went to the hatch, unlocked the chain, and opened it. The smell hit first. Salt, metal, rot, time. The stairs descended farther than I remembered. And this time, I brought nothing. No lantern, no rifle. Only the journal, 'cause something told me I'd need it. I descended 20 steps, then 40, then 60. Gravity changed. My ears popped. Blood trickled from my nose, but I didn't stop. The tunnel began to widen. Stone became bone. The walls pulsed faintly. And ahead was the mirror. Not a wall of mirrors, just one the size of a cathedral window. And within it, me, waiting, smiling. I stepped into the chamber and felt the air change. Thicker, like walking underwater. Every breath was a battle. The mirror, if you could even call it that, rippled gently, as if stirred by wind. But there was no wind down here, no sound, no heat, only that thing in the glass. My reflection didn't mimic me anymore. It stood still as I moved closer, smiling with perfect calm. I reached out, our fingers touched mine flesh, his liquid light, and then it spoke, without sound, without words. The voice was inside me, like a second consciousness that had always been there, just dormant. You are the last. The seal is nearly broken. I yanked my hand back. What is this place? I said aloud. My voice echoed endlessly into the stone. The mirror shimmered and images began to flash, brief, rapid-fire glimpses like strobe-lit memories. A cabin in snow, a man sharpening antlers, a woman screaming into a silent void, dozens of caretakers, some terrified, some tranquil, stepping down into the same hatch I had just descended. One stayed longer than the others, the man in the chair. Me, I screamed and turned from the mirror. The tunnel behind me had vanished. There was only the chamber and the mirror. You brought the journal, the voice said again, using my thoughts. It wasn't a question. The book was warm in my hand. What does it mean? I demanded. Why me? The mirror showed me a page I hadn't seen before, one buried deep in the back, past blank sheets that were now covered in script. Only the bound may anchor the threshold. Only the willing may unseat the guardian. Only the reflection may choose. Beneath it, cycle 44, outcome undecided. I dropped the journal. You want me to replace him? That's what this is, isn't it? The reflection nodded once, solemnly, but then it spoke again, inside me, or free them all. The glass trembled violently, and behind the reflection, I saw shapes. Others, dozens, maybe hundreds, pressed against the inside of the mirror, distorted and crying out without sound. Trapped caretakers, all 43 before me. I fell to my knees. How do I stop it? The mirror began to crack just slightly from the bottom corner, and then two doors opened on either side of the chamber. One glowed with pale blue light, peaceful, still like a release. The other burned crimson alive, writhing and full of suffering. I didn't understand, but I knew the second door was the only real choice, because it led somewhere, and the first, that was acceptance. I stood. I looked one final time at my reflection, which now looked afraid, and I walked toward the red door. The last thing I heard before crossing the threshold, you were the first to choose pain. Then everything went dark. I fell. No stairs, no floor, just an endless, gut-wrenching plunge into blackness that smelled like rust and ozone. My ears popped again, my mouth filled with copper, my eyes burned, and then I stopped. Not gradually, just stopped. I was standing in the estate's living room, but it wasn't mine. The windows looked out on a coastline instead of pine trees. The paintings on the walls were unfamiliar portraits of people I had never seen, and the calendar on the table read February 6th, 1961. My heart hammered in my chest. This was the same house in a different timeline, or a different version of it, a different me. Footsteps echoed behind me. I turned and saw a man walk in, mid-30s, dark beard, eyes hollow with exhaustion. He looked just like me, exactly. He didn't seem surprised. He nodded once and said, "Cycle 12. We sat in silence for a long time. He explained it like this. The estate is a fixed point across dimensions. Every caretaker is drawn here when their world begins to converge. You weren't the first. You won't be the last. But you might be the first with a choice." I asked him what choice I even had. He reached into the fireplace and pulled out a single item. A key, old, rusted, heavy as a brick in the hand. "The key to the threshold," he said. "You'll know where it fits when you're ready." He told me what the red door really meant. It was the only path that offered resistance, pain, but also change. Everyone else chose the blue door, and they became part of the mirror. Static reflections, frozen timelines, echoes, Before I could ask another question, the world around me folded like a dying star. He shouted something, maybe a warning, but the sound inverted. I blinked, and I was back in my estate. Same walls, same fireplace. Only now, there were 43 keys laid out across the mantel. All old, all rusted, all waiting. The journal had returned. A new page burned its way into the paper. You are the divergence, the one who steps away from all paths. And then, handwritten beneath it, in my own handwriting, the mirror will try to pull you back. Don't let it. I stood, I gathered the keys, and I went back to the hatch. The door was already open. This time, the chamber looked different. No mirror, only a door at the far end with no handle. Just a circular hole exactly the size of one of the keys. I tried the first, then the second. Each time I inserted a key that didn't work. A vision burst into my mind. Caretaker 15, kneeling, crying into the dirt. Caretaker 29, clawing at their own face. Caretaker 6, whispering names I'd never heard. Every wrong key fed me another horror, until the fourth, my key, it clicked. The door creaked open, and behind it was nothing. No monsters, no mirror, just a desk, a pen, and a blank contract above it, engraved into the stone. Caretaker, author, anchor. I sat. The pen moved on its own, drawing out words I didn't understand in a language I didn't know, but felt. One final line formed in English. Sign, and the cycle ends. Refuse, and the world forgets you. I held the pen, shaking, and wrote. I refuse. The paper caught fire in my hands. The world exploded into white. Then silence. I expected death, or at least obliteration. Instead, I woke up gasping on the floor of the estate's living room. Everything was normal. The fire crackled. A warm cup of coffee steamed beside my journal. Outside the window, morning sunlight cut through pines dusted in fresh snow. No countdown, no mirror, no whispering voices in my head. For a full hour, I just sat there, watching the world not fall apart. I checked the calendar. It read March 1st, but my last memory was from October. 5 months, gone. I went to the computer. It powered on. The email app opened automatically. One message sat in my inbox. Subject, you did it. From No Reply Blackwell Holdings. Orgy. The body of the email was empty, except for a single line. Cycle 45 begins in 13 years. Until then, live. I tried to leave the estate. This time, the truck was there. The gravel road was there. The forest didn't twist or erase behind me. I made it all the way back to town. Emma was still working the store. She blinked when she saw me and said, thought you'd be one of the ones who stayed. I asked her what she meant. She only smiled. I drove another 8 hours to my sister's place. Beth answered the door and hugged me so hard I thought she might break my ribs. She said I'd been declared dead in January, that my last email was sent in November, that no one could find the estate, that the company who hired me never existed. I didn't correct her. I just stayed the night, slept in a real bed, dreamed of silence instead of screaming. The next morning, I woke to find the journal in my backpack. The last page was blank, except for 4 words, written in red ink. Anchor reset. Stay ready. I didn't go back to the estate. I didn't need to, but I started seeing signs again. Not hallucinations, not delusions, little things. Reflections that lagged for a second too long. Phone calls where I heard myself breathing on the other end. A news article about a cabin fire in Montana photo showed a man identical to me, watching from the woods. I think the threshold is still open somewhere. Not for me, for the next one, cycle 45. And when that happens, I'll be waiting, because I remember what they said. Only the refuser ends the loop. Only the divergence opens the path. Only the last can free the first. I don't know what I'll do when it all begins again, but I'm not just a caretaker anymore. I'm a witness, and maybe next time I'll be the one watching from the other side of the mirror. It's been 6 months since I left the estate. I moved 3 times since then. Changed my name once. I rent a room above a bookstore in a town no one's heard of. I pay cash. No credit cards. No online accounts. I keep off grid. Because I know they're still watching. Not the government. Not some black ops company. Them. The things behind the mirror. Some nights, I hear tapping on the window even when I'm 3 stories up. Other times, it's the lights that flicker in rhythm 3 slow. Too fast like the pulses the sonar used to pick up in the deep chamber. And sometimes, in the bookstore below, I'll spot a customer walk in, not say a word, and stare at me from between the aisles. They never buy anything. They always leave behind a single coin, same kind every time. 1944 wheat penny. The journal showed up again 3 nights ago, wrapped in brown paper, left on my bed. Inside was a photo, black and white, weathered. Me only younger standing outside the estate in 1923. I wasn't even born until the 90s. And the strangest part, someone had scribbled a name on the back in fountain pen. Caretaker 01D. I've been researching. There's no record of a Blackwell Holdings, not in real estate, not in corporate filings, not in tax records, but I found mention of a Dominic Hale, a cryptographer and mountaineer who went missing in 1923 in Colorado. Exact region as the estate. He was known for exploring the liminal wilderness, places rumored to Bedtime, and the only surviving photo of him, he looks just like me. I think I was the first, and now, after 44 failed cycles, I'm circling back to where it began. I haven't aged in 6 months. I haven't bled once, not even a paper cut. My fingernails don't grow. My stubble never changes. It's like my body is caught in pause, frozen between timelines. Last week, I ran into Emma again. Different town, different state. She worked in a flower shop this time. She smiled when she saw me, then said, "You're not supposed to be here yet." Before I could ask what she meant, she walked into the back and never returned. The shop closed the next day. The mirror's back, not in the estate. In my bathroom at 3:33 it ripples, and behind it, my reflection isn't mine. It's an older version of me, worn, hunched, smiling. He holds up a sign. "Don't wait, it begins again. Prepare." So I packed the journal, the rifle, my old hiking boots, the 44 keys, just in case, because I know what's next. The world isn't a loop, it's a spiral. Each cycle goes deeper, and this time, I'm going into the mirror. I didn't sleep before I went in, didn't eat, didn't breathe. The mirror didn't shimmer when I touched it this time. It shattered like glass, silent and weightless, pulling me through with a pressure that folded every atom in my body into something else. I expected darkness. Instead, I found myself in the estate again. Only it wasn't the estate. Not quite. Everything was reversed. The fireplace was on the wrong wall. The paintings all stared at me, subtly changing each time I blinked. And the books whispered, literally, when I walked past them. They mumbled in dozens of voices, mine included. I made my way to the office. There was a man sitting at the desk. It was me, but older. He didn't look up. He said, "You're late." I asked what this place was. His answer chilled me. "This is the reflection of your choices. You've been here 13 times. You only think it's your first." He pushed a box across the desk. Inside were photos. Dozens. Hundreds. Every version of me that came before, different ages, different lives. All of us, standing at the estate, some smiling, some crying, one holding a gun to his own head. The older me stood up, walked to the fireplace, and pulled a lever behind a loose brick. The floor split open. Stone stairs spiraled downward, impossible geometry, descending far below what the land should have allowed. He didn't speak as we walked. The walls were covered in names, thousands, etched by hand, some scratched out violently, others glowing faintly, My name was there many times. At the bottom was a room, circular. At the center, a mirror. But unlike the others, this one shimmered with stars, galaxies swimming behind the glass like goldfish in a bowl of black ink. It's the origin, he said, the true anchor, the first mirror, the one all others echo. I asked what I was supposed to do. He said, break it, and you end everything including yourself. Step into it, and you complete the cycle. Walk away, and everything repeats. I stood there for hours, staring at myself, staring at the cosmos. My hand reached for the journal, but it was gone. Only one thing was left in my pocket, the 45th key, and I finally understood. It didn't fit a door, it fit me. So I swallowed it, literally. It burned the whole way down, and as soon as it hit my stomach, the mirror cracked. The cracks rippled like lightning bolts across time. I heard screaming, my own, thousands of versions, all crying out at once. Then silence. The older version of me collapsed to the floor, dust crumbling from his skin. He looked up and whispered, maybe now we rest, and he was gone. I turned back toward the stairs, but there weren't any, just a mirror, still cracked, still glowing, still waiting. So I walked through. Passing through the origin wasn't like before. It didn't feel like movement. It felt like forgetting. Each step stripped something from me, memories, fears, hopes, until only instinct remained. Then the world blinked into place. I stood in a version of the estate that had no time. The sun hung motionless in the sky, casting long shadows that never shifted. The air shimmered, thick like syrup. The furniture inside the house was the same, but duplicated. 2 couches, 2 dining tables, 2 identical photos of me and Beth on opposite walls. One where I was smiling, one where I looked dead-eyed. This wasn't a mirror world. This was the convergence. I wandered the halls. They looped endlessly. Rooms bled into one another. I passed a kitchen that opened into another kitchen. A staircase that led directly to another staircase. Twisted like a Mobius strip. Voices whispered in tandem. Some sounded like my sister. Others, like the creature I once saw in the woods. At the end of a corridor, I saw myself again, only this time. He was young, 18, wearing my first hiking pack. Fresh-faced, naive. He didn't see me, just walked into a door and vanished. Then another version, mid-30s, bearded, limping, muttering to himself. He glanced up, locked eyes with me, and whispered, run. But there was nowhere to run. The walls began to melt. Drip by drip, the estate collapsed inward like it was a memory being deleted, and in the center of it all stood a man. Not me, not exactly. He wore my face, but it was wrong, too symmetrical, too clean. His eyes reflecting galaxies. The voice he spoke with wasn't sound. It was gravity. You were the first and the last. All timelines flow through you. I asked him what I was supposed to do. He extended a hand, and suddenly I saw everything. Dozens of caretakers, hundreds of realities. Every cycle where I broke, ran, died, or became the creature. Every version of Beth, searching for me, never knowing what happened. Every echo of my name carved into stone. All of it layered like pages in a book, waiting to be closed. You are the lock and the key, he said. You choose what remains. I knelt, not in surrender, in acceptance. If I stayed, if I became the anchor, the timelines would stabilize. No more cycles, but I'd lose myself forever. If I refused, the loops would continue. Another version of me would take my place. Another scream in the woods. Then I remembered something Beth once said when we were kids. Stargazing, even stars D, but they go out with light. I stood up at the false version of myself eye to eye and said, I'm not the lock, I'm the fire. And I ran straight into him. We collided with the force of collapsing suns, and everything burned. Fire everywhere. But it wasn't heat or flame. It was memory, unraveling in spirals of light. Whole realities collapsed into ribbons, folding in on themselves. And for a moment I saw everything as it truly was. The estate, the mirror, the creature, the man who hired me. All just masks worn by something older. Something watching from behind the fabric of what we call real. And for the first time, it blinked. I woke up on a hillside. Pine trees all around me. Crisp air. The scent of moss and early spring. No stats, no mirror. Just me, dressed in my hiking gear. Backpack full of supplies. The same gear I packed 6 months ago. Only now, my phone had service. I checked the date. April 3rd. Exactly the day I'd first left to drive to the Rockies. Was it a dream? A hallucination? I wouldn't have believed it myself until I opened the side pocket of my pack and found the 45th key. Only this time, it was warm and glowing faintly. I hiked down toward a ranger station. No signs of the estate. The land was forested, untouched. The map at the station didn't list any Blackwell property or private roads. When I asked about the area, the ranger raised an eyebrow. "You mean the dead zone," he said. "GPS doesn't work up there. Weird place. People say it feels like being watched." I nodded, and I didn't say another word. Back in civilization, I called Beth. Hearing her voice again was like breathing after nearly drowning. I asked if she remembered me emailing her from the estate. She paused. What estate? She didn't remember. Not the job, not the calls, not anything. But she remembered me. That was enough. I kept the key. I buried it beneath a pine tree on a nameless ridge I'll never return to. Sometimes I feel it pulsing in my dreams, like a heartbeat echoing through the ground. Sometimes I think I left a part of myself behind. Maybe that's what the anchor really was. A test, a choice. Now, I work at a bookstore. I stock shelves, drink coffee, and watch the sun rise through dusty glass windows. It's not glamorous, but it's real. And I don't need mirrors to tell me who I am anymore. I know I survived. And maybe, just maybe, I ended the cycle. But if someday you get an email and offer too good to be true, asking you to care for a place in the middle of nowhere, do one thing for me. Don't girl, because not every house in the woods is a house, and not every reflection in the mirror is you.